Hello, and welcome to the fourth episode of 49 Faithful Lee. I'm your host, Miriah Lee, and tonight I have a very special, faithful guest, Jessie, J-Nay. How you doing tonight, Jessie?
I'm doing fantastic, Miriah. I'm so happy that you've got your show up and running. This is a long time in the making, and I am very happy to be a part of it. Thank you so much for asking me to come on.
Thank you so much for being here and for all your help. Jessie did this nice little thing that we have around our pictures here and making it look all pretty, so I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Why don't you tell everybody that doesn't know where they can find you and what you're doing?
Yeah, of course. So, Twitter handle right there at jnay_LSS. So, you can find me on Twitter there. I write for All 49ers Sports Illustrated. And then the YouTube channel is going to be Last Second Sports.
Sounds good. Let's go ahead and get right into it. The biggest topic of everybody's minds, the quarterbacks. You've recently, well, I guess a couple times now, you've had one of Trey Lance's quarterback coaches on your show, and you did a wonderful interviews with him. For those that haven't seen it, you should definitely check it out. Why don't you, lately I've been seeing, the whole wobble and the football, all these things that everybody's picking Trey apart for. And I know that you talked to his coach about that. Why don't you go ahead and give us some of that info that he gave you and let us know why you think Trey Lance is special.
Yeah, absolutely. So anybody who's listened to my path early on about this, very, very early, I told Grant that I thought that the pairing of Trey Lance and Shanahan could be a disaster. And this was way back when the 49ers were at 12, okay? And when they moved up to 3, I really started digging in and watching a lot of tape. And my mind about Trey Lance changed completely. And so when I reached out to his quarterback coach and was able to get him on before the draft and now 2 times post-draft, the same thing keeps coming up about Trey. And it's the same thing that we heard throughout the draft process from anybody who interviewed him or anybody that spent time around him, is that this kid gets it more than anybody that a lot of people have ever seen. The way that NDSU played, he had a full playbook, Miriah, that he had to learn. And that playbook was verbose. It's not like he's at one of these colleges where they hold up signs, he looks to the sideline, and he calls out a play based off of what they're telling him to do. No, it's a full playbook that is long in verbiage that he has to learn. He plays under center more than any of the top quarterbacks do, so he's ready for that. And on top of that, he also called his own audibles and he called his own protections. So that's even more than what he's going to be required to do in a San Francisco uniform. In a San Francisco uniform, the center calls the protections. But the fact that he knows what he's looking at pre-snap definitely can help him out. And, when it comes to the wobble and does he throw too hard? Can he throw with touch? All these other things. The wobble, from what I understand, according to his quarterback coach, is the same exact issue that a high throw comes from. And Trey does have a tendency, and early on this tendency was more when he was going to his right, that he would throw high sometimes. And a lot of that is because he's not committing to his throws, okay? So his base is fine, according to his coach. His legs are in the right place, which is the most important part.
Right.
But that final 5% of the throw where he goes to follow through, he's either doing so too quickly or he's not turning his wrist fully over and committing to his throws, which can cause a high throw or it can cause a wobbly pass. But that being said, it is a small issue. It easily can be corrected. And a lot of that has to come because he's rushing his delivery, because he isn't quite seeing the field the way that he would like to. He's not as comfortable because this is all new for him. He hasn't played but 3 preseason games and 1 meaningless showcase game in the last 500 plus days.
Right.
So it's going to take him some time. But that being said, Trey is still the guy that the 49ers drafted to be their future. He is still that savvy player. He's still extremely smart. He's still very hardworking. He's still a quick learner, and he has all the skills and physically is as gifted as anybody in the league. Trey Lance will be just fine.
Yeah. I've seen so much, I guess, people coming, I don't know if it's just Jimmy fans or people from everywhere are now, of course, ranking, Trey Lance below every other quarterback in this draft already.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I'm not one to judge after 3 preseason games anyway, but it's like the guy, he hasn't played football in so long, and that's what I think people are forgetting. And it's like everybody's talking about how Fields is so great and did so well. It's like Nagy and them and the Bears called plays to make Fields look good, to boost his confidence, to make him go out there and showcase what he has. Whereas it appears that Shanahan's doing the opposite, having Trey go out there and work on things that he needs to work on that he's not good at. So, I think it's just kind of, funny that people are going to judge him, off of those games. And, that's why he's not ready to start and Jimmy needs to start and, all this. But yeah, I mean, I'm so excited to have Trey just bring that excitement back, like just watching the game. Like I haven't felt that excitement. Like, yeah, when we went to the Super Bowl, in 2019, it was an exciting season, but still every time Jimmy dropped back, I was sick to my stomach thinking he was going to throw a turnover. It's like I couldn't enjoy when our offense, had to rely on Jimmy because I'm scared every time, And it's like I haven't felt that excitement since, Kaepernick. Since, watching
so
him
funny.
run across the field like the way he did, it was just like so fun to watch. And to have that again, I'm excited.
Miriah, it's so funny that you say that because that is exactly how I felt in 2019. And, people try to kill me for it, but I'm just giving you my genuine feelings. I was scared to death every time Jimmy dropped back that a boneheaded pick was about to come. And I get it. He only threw 13 picks, right? But when you look at it, he actually was 4th in the league, and not in a good way, with the highest turnover rate. Okay. So that tells you that Jimmy G puts the ball in harm's way an awful lot. Okay. And by the way, that turnover rate, that removes tipped passes and balls that were on the receivers that got picked. That's just on Jimmy. So I agree with you there. The other thing that I'll say about this is anybody who's making a rush judgment based off of some preseason games, I think we have to take into account that although the group was small, there certainly was a small segment that wanted Mac Jones to be the guy. Okay. There definitely was a large segment that wanted Fields to be the guy. And then there was a select few that hoped that some way Zach Wilson would fall to 3 and he would be the guy. So now that people are seeing all of these guys go out and play and everybody's showing flashes, well, you're trying to take this narrative that you had pre-draft and be right. So of course you're going to be like, well, see, I told you, like, look at what Fields is doing and look at what Mac's doing and Trey's struggling. I knew he wasn't ready. These are all things that you thought before the draft. So now that you're seeing it kind of play out, you just want to be right. And that's just the way that it is. But it is frustrating because I believe in Trey so much. I'm confident that when this thing is all said and done, he's going to be at worst the second best quarterback in this draft. And I will not be shocked if he ends up being the best quarterback out of this whole entire draft. And I am so into that with conviction that I am looking so forward to end of 2022, end of 2023, when everybody else who still questions it finally realizes Trey is that dude, period.
Right. Yep. I can't wait because like you, I've been high on Trey since the beginning.
Sure have.
And I mean, I just don't know how you can put on tape and not think the kid's special, just watching him, it just brings, I don't know, something just popped for me that it didn't for the rest of them, and I think that's what just stuck me with him the whole time. And I'm like you, I believe that, Shanahan can easily draw up plays for him to be successful in starting day one.
Absolutely.
I don't know how this broken finger or, the bone in his finger, how that situation, what to even think about that situation, if that's going to have, some effect on his playing time come week 1. How, I don't know. I'm interested to see how that, if it's worse than what they're saying, or you never know with them, that's the hard part.
You're absolutely right. You never do know with the 49ers, and they've, D Ford, right? Great example. D Ford hurt his back. Oh, it's a week to week thing. Oh, okay. Like, it was all season, and then by the end of the season, we're like, is this guy gonna retire? Is he done? So a week to week thing turned into almost a career ending injury thing.
I never thought in a million years we would see him on the field this year.
No, absolutely not. And I think it's fair. I don't think any of us really did. So, to hear that it's a 1 week thing and he's progressing well, I've got to imagine, just because he was out there practicing, and I get it, he didn't have a ball or anything like that, I've got to imagine it really comes down to a pain tolerance, and it's a chip in the bone. So that means it's probably not going to be healed in a week.
Right.
Probably it's not going to be healed in a week. We know that. But these practices this week, there was only 2 of them. There wasn't a lot behind them. Just the way that the collective bargaining agreement works, they couldn't put in a lot of time and a lot of hours. So there's just no point in risking it and having them go out there and practice. Right. To where next week, I imagine, whether it's Monday, Tuesday, what have you, he will practice. He'll be ready to go. And it comes down to a pain tolerance. And I'm sure that a 6'4", 220-pound kid is going to be just fine. So he'll play.
With that being said, and now that we've heard all that we've heard about who's starting or who's not starting week 1, what are your thoughts on the whole? When do you think that we're actually going to see Trey start?
It's tough, Miriah. I don't, at this point, like, I don't want to make a prediction because I genuinely just don't have a feeling in my heart about it. I thought he would start week 1, and I had all the conviction in the world behind that. And it doesn't look like that's the way that it's going to play out. So I think it would be, sorry to not have a prediction for you. It's definitely not as interesting, but it's, I've got to go with what my gut says. And that's one thing that I always tell people is I'm going with my gut. When I say these things, I'm not just saying it to be crazy. Like, I really believe these things. So right now I don't have an opinion on when it's going to be, but what I will say is I don't think that there is a better time to start him than week 1, because look at the rest of the schedule. What are you going to do? Start him week 3? I've heard week 3, which is home game number 1. Well, that's against the Packers. I wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
Then I've heard after the bye week, which is a primetime game against the Colts, DeForest Buckner's first game back at Levi. I don't think that's a good place to do it. So there is no clean break for this. Week 1 was the cleanest break, and that's most likely not going to be the case. So we'll see how long it takes. But I will say this, 17 weeks of Trey Lance learning and getting this team to the playoffs is a lot more lethal than him playing for only 6 weeks or 8 weeks. Because when the playoffs do come around and the 49ers are in it, because they will be regardless, Trey Lance scares teams a hell of a lot more than Jimmy Garoppolo. And I would take one more season loss just to get Trey up to snuff for the playoffs, because the goal ultimately is to win now, and winning now with Trey in the playoffs is more of a possibility than winning now with Jimmy in the playoffs. And that I do believe.
Right. That's why I asked, because, I was with you on the whole starting week 1, and, I feel the same way. Like, I can't even think of when will be the best, if it's not week 1, when's going to be the best time, but I for sure know that once we go to Trey fully, well, before I get to that, I want to say, I think in my heart of hearts that Shanahan wanted Trey to go in there and win this job and start week 1.
Yes.
And he didn't go in and do that, take it from Jimmy. So this is the only way that Shanahan now has to get Lance on the field, is to sprinkle him in with Jimmy, or however he's planning on doing it. And I feel like that when Lance, does show whatever Shanahan's looking for, gets his teammates behind him or gets Kittle behind him or whatever the case may be, then he'll take over. But once he does take over, I don't want to see a Miami thing to where we're going back to Jimmy, and because if the locker room doesn't have problems right now, it will when that happens.
Yeah, you're 100% right about that. And Miriah, they had a chance. They had a chance to nip this in the bud. And the way that they could have done that is gotten rid of Jimmy around draft time or when they went up and got that third pick overall. Okay. And we know that you don't go get pick number 3 and trade all that capital for a guy that you don't want to replace Jimmy immediately.
Right.
They sniffed around in every other locker room, whether it was Stafford, whether it was Darnold, whether it was Watson, whether it was Rodgers. They were looking for a replacement to Jimmy G all over the place. So they absolutely wanted Trey to start. But the problem is they wanted way too much capital for Jimmy. And so they sat on him and sat on him and sat on him. And now they're in a situation where, just like the fan base, you've got to imagine, okay, so a lot of these players have been on this team for a while. They're in a spot where they haven't won a lot other than 2019, okay? And the fan base is exactly the same way. Jimmy G was a part of a fantastic team that got to the Super Bowl in 2019. That's why you have this large fan base that's saying, well, Jimmy G's done it before. Like, we got to roll with Jimmy. We have to roll with Jimmy. I've got to imagine that the locker room's the exact same way. And if you start Trey week 1, let's say he goes out there and falls on his face. He has a 2 or 3 pick game. They lose. And what's going to happen? You're going to have a whole fan base chanting Jimmy's name. That cannot happen. Once you go to Trey, that's it. You're with Trey 100%. This half in, half out that they're doing with Jimmy will not happen when Trey's the starter. It's going to be 100% Trey. So now Shanahan is in a spot that even if he does want Trey to be the guy, he has to make sure that Trey is 100% ready to be the guy, because if there is any slip up, he has egg on his face.
I agree. And
nice Pinor.
what do you think about when they do make that switch to Trey, like how that whole dynamic will be with Jimmy, like as his backup and like, behind him, breathing over his shoulder the entire time, knowing that, that used to be Jimmy's team and that he does have that support.
Yeah, of course. I think the other thing that I left out is, if this was a situation like Chicago, where they brought in 2 new quarterbacks, one being a veteran and one being a rookie, there's no doubt in my mind that not only Shanahan wouldn't hesitate to start Lance, but there wouldn't be a single person in this fan base that would want Lance to sit on the bench, right? But because it is Jimmy, there's going to be maybe a little bit of a rift. Here's what I will say. For as much as I kind of crap on Jimmy, he is the consummate pro, right? And I will not take that away from him. He is a pro's pro. He's a veteran through and through. He's making a lot of money, and he's a hell of a teammate. So when that time does come, I think he's going to be extremely supportive. I think Jimmy will not be the reason that this locker room revolts in any sort of way. And to Shanahan's point, when Trey's ready, everybody will know he's ready. There will not be a question of, well, maybe Jimmy should be the guy. Not only from the fan base, but from every writer out there, every player on this team, everybody through and through will know it's Trey time, and that'll be it. I don't think there will be any issues.
I really hope that there's not. Before we move off this subject, I just want to get your opinion on one more thing, and that is George Kittle. How do you feel about him and the way that he's been acting in his press conferences and that whole situation?
All right, so I made a comment a couple weeks back, and I got some mixed reviews on this one, but I'm going to throw it out again. This is Shanahan's fault. And this is, in my opinion, this is Shanahan being having a lapse in judgment as far as leadership. I'm not saying he's a bad leader, right? All leaders make mistakes, but I think this was his mistake. I think the team knows who's going to start, and I think that they knew as soon as that Charger game was over whose job it was. And he keeps parading everybody out there because he wants to troll the whole media and parading his team out there to answer the same question over and over and over. and they're getting frustrated with it. Okay.
Yeah.
So they're not frustrated with Shanahan, but they're frustrated with the questioning. And that questioning can absolutely go away if he just says, listen, Jimmy's our starter. Now, he's trying to sell us on, well, I don't want to name a starter because I want an edge going into week one. Well, first of all, that edge of not knowing only lasts for week one. Second of all, the Lions have 2 weeks to prepare for you. You don't think that they're preparing for all scenarios here?
Right.
They're going to be ready to go. So there's not going to be a big surprise that you can throw at them. Whether it's Trey or Jimmy, they're going to be ready for it. And then after that, the league's on to you. So it doesn't really matter. There's film out there. You're not surprising anybody. So I think that's kind of a cop out. But I definitely think that not only Kittle, I'm sure the rest of the team's a little frustrated. Kittle's just showing it more. And, quite frankly, Jimmy's his guy. He's always been his guy. Like, they are legit good friends. And so I understand it. You don't want your guy to be out of there, but the writing's on the wall and it is what it is. When the time comes, he'll fall in line like everybody else and he wants to win. So I think he'll put that above everything.
Yeah, I don't know. I've been feeling some kind of way about him lately. And I don't know. I guess it's just because I am such a big Trey Lance supporter. And I feel like maybe I'm like, feeling like the mother hen or what. Like I want them all to go out there and say nice stuff. Yeah. And, and like, I feel like Kittle's the only one that's going out there and, acting some strange type of way about it. And like, I get that Jimmy's his guy and everything, but I mean, I don't know. I just like I was listening to the press conferences, I think from yesterday when Daniel Brunskill, got up there and like, I was so surprised to hear him get up there. I even had to rewind it and make sure that's who he was talking about because it seems like everybody's so scared to say anything nice about Trey Lance up there, and he's up there showering with compliments the whole time, so that was good to see. But yeah, like Kittle, I don't know. Like he hasn't said, I don't think like one really nice thing. Like he'll say something nice, but this, he does this, but
he's giving them total tough love. And you're right. Like Brunskill kind of went out on an edge because everybody's doing that all throughout training camp. If somebody gave a compliment to Lance, they'd be like, oh, but Jimmy's also doing really good. You can't just say Trey's doing good. You had to throw in Jimmy's also doing good. So the whole thing's just kind of interesting. I'm sure that they all have marching orders like, hey, this is what you say to the media. They're both doing good. You compliment them both and you get out of there. Like, I'm sure they have a PR team. I'm sure that they're lining them up ready to roll. And, Kittle probably less than anybody could give two craps because he's paid. He's an all-pro. He's the best tight end in the game. And he's like, whatever, I'm going to say whatever I want to say.
Yeah. Says, hey, Jessie, do you think Shanahan will have to talk to the locker room before making decisions about going all in on Trey?
Yeah, I mean, he's going to have to talk to the locker room, but he's not going to have to consult the locker room. I think those are two different things. He's definitely going to let them know, hey, this is what we're doing. Here's why we're doing it. He's going to have to kind of sell them on the idea. But he's not going to go to them and be like, hey, what do you guys think? Are we good to go this week? No? Okay, we'll keep Jimmy. It won't be anything like that.
All right, let's go ahead and get off the quarterback. So let's go to do some predictions of what do you think the NFC West, how everybody will end up in the NFC West.
Okay, do you want to go worst to first or first to last?
However you want to do it.
All right, we'll go worst to first.
All right.
So I will go number 4. I'm going to go with the Rams. And I think the Rams are kind of that Cinderella team that everybody's talking about this year. If you go into Vegas, they're a heavy betting favorite. And I just don't see it with them. I think that the team is very thin. They have a left tackle, by the way, that is older than Robbie Gould. And they did themselves no favors. They did not draft a single offensive lineman in this draft when they needed it desperately. Instead, they went and took a luxury pick with a wide receiver, which they could not afford, in my opinion. They've got 2 of the best defensive players on the planet in Ramsey and Donald. But behind them, it's weak. And we're talking about a marathon season. Chances are one of those guys is going to go down. maybe not for the season, but if one of those guys goes down for a game, you can pretty much chalk that up to a loss. And they've already lost their running back for the season. They're trying to piece it together. I don't see the Rams as that team. Now, I do think all 4 of these teams actually make it to the playoffs. There are 7 teams that make it now. I think all 4 teams from the NFC West do make it. So I think the Rams make the playoffs. I just think that they're the worst team in this division. Now, they may be the scariest come playoff time because they do have that talent. And if they are healthy, Stafford having a year under his belt definitely will help in that McVay system. But I just don't think for the regular season that they're even close to the best team in this division. So I'm going to put the Rams 4th.
Yeah, I had the Rams 4th as well.
Yes.
And that's for everything that you laid out. So, who you got 3rd?
All right, 3rd for me is going to be the Seahawks. So the Seahawks are talent-wise, top to bottom, probably the least talented team in this division, but they have by far the best quarterback. Russell Wilson's a Hall of Famer. Russell Wilson keeps this thing ticking. And they do have weapons, don't get me wrong, but they don't have a team built where you need to be built. The offensive line is not strong. The defensive line is not strong. And you want to be strong in the trenches. So for me, over the course of a 17-game season, I feel like that will wear on them. And Russell Wilson, you look at his last 3 years, he takes a lot of sacks. He took something like, it was like 48 sacks, 51 sacks, and 47 sacks the last 3 years.
It's crazy.
He will get sacked. And that offensive line is not that good. So I have to put the Seahawks 3rd. I would love to put them 4th because I hate them so much. But I know Russell Wilson's that good, and I'm never going to make him or predict him to be the last team in the division. So I've got to go with them number 3.
And I had the Seahawks 3rd too. And that was my whole reason behind it was Russell Wilson. If he wasn't on that team, they would be 4th for sure, no matter who they had a quarterback pretty much. But I mean,
if you flip-flop Russell Wilson with any other quarterback in this division, I'm putting the Seahawks 4th. But Russell Wilson's, he's just that damn good. So I have to go with Russell Wilson and the Seahawks number 3. Number 2, let's see if we agree all the way through. Number 2, I have the Arizona Cardinals. So what worries me about the Cardinals is twofold. 1, they have by far the worst coach in the division. Number 2, their secondary, as far as the corners go, really worry me. Their safeties are fine, but their corners, that's a major, major weakness. That being said, I think they picked up veterans in the right places. They have 2 very good pass rushers. They have good linebackers. Kyler Murray, to me, I have him as a top 10 quarterback in the league. I really like Kyler Murray. Some people, he's not their cup of tea, but for me, I think he's very good. And now you've got Hopkins and Green. The offensive line has been upgraded. I think the Cardinals are a real threat in this division, and they may struggle a little bit in division. But I think once they get outside the division, Kyler Murray is a handful. I think that team has weapons all over the place, and I think they're going to wreak havoc through the rest of their schedule, and that's going to be enough to make them the number 2 team in this division.
Right. Yeah, I went with them at number 2 as well. And I mean, I think they have a, great team, great roster. It's just their head coach. I don't have any faith in him. Yeah. I think, if they don't come in second like we think they will, if they end up doing bad this year, he's gone, I think. So I think that'll be the best thing, for that whole team and for Murray not to suffer, he needs a good coach in there that can actually take advantage of his strengths, because Absolutely. That team is stacked and getting older. So they need to hurry it up.
Yeah, completely agree with that. And you're right. This might be Cliff's last year, and long term, it's probably better for Kyler Murray and the Arizona Cardinals for sure. The last thing I would say is the 49ers, they're going to be number 1, but not because I'm going homer. This really genuinely is because I really think that they're going to split with every team in the division. And outside of the division, they have the easiest schedule, right? Like when everybody else goes to the NFC North, they're going to have to play the Ravens, the Steelers, and the Browns. but the 49ers get to play the Bengals, right? So they just have that one extra game throughout the schedule that is a little bit easier. The NFC North has nothing for the 49ers. The 49ers are an absolute matchup nightmare for every team in that division. They can run at will on all of them. And so I just think the rest of the schedule lines up very favorably. Now, I said the Rams can be very scary come playoff time, much scarier than even the Niners if Jimmy G is still the starter. Now, if Trey Lance at that point has some games under his belt and he is the starter, the 49ers are the favorite out of the NFC West. And, them and Tampa Bay, that's going to be juggernauts going at it. But if Jimmy G is the starter, I could see a scenario where the 49ers end up making it, being the number 1 seed out of the West, number 2 seed overall, and getting bounced in the first round because Jimmy G can't hold a candle to some of those other quarterbacks. And, it could be their detriment. So we'll see what happens. But I do think the 49ers win the division. Even if it means they end up with the same record as the Cardinals, I think they'll have that tiebreaker. So I'm going to go with the 49ers to win the division.
And I agree. 4 for 4.
Yes.
49ers winning the division. And yeah, this team, when you look at it from top to bottom, this team is the most stacked team that I can remember seeing in a long time. And it's like even our backups, like they would be starters on a lot of other teams. And I just feel like, and I do agree that if we have Trey come playoffs, we're going to be a lot more deadly and we'll go a lot further because the fact is that defenses know how to stop Jimmy. They're not going to know what to do. They can't stop Trey. That they're not going to be able to stop that offense once Trey's in there. With what Shanny can do with the run game and, and we haven't even seen 1% of anything that he's planning, that's the crazy part is that guy is such a mastermind and I'm so excited just to see what he's drawing up and what he can come up with next, like how he's going to stay 2 steps ahead of everybody else. Because now that he has other teams, coming and doing, trying to copy the offense and doing all this, he's now adding in Trey Lance and going to take this run game to a scary level.
Yeah, I mean, let's just be real about the situation. Jimmy G, what everybody likes to tout the 24-8 record. He's 8-6 in his last 14 games. Once the book is out on a quarterback, and it happens to every quarterback, by the way, there's a span where the league catches up to you, and all of a sudden you're not winning as many games. This is not just a Jimmy G thing. But can you get out of it? And the way that Jimmy G plays, I don't believe he can get out of it. He's never going to be able to throw outside the numbers from one hash to the other. He's never going to be a dynamic down the field thrower. He, more than anybody, threw the least amount of passes that traveled at least 15 yards out of any quarterback from a percentage standpoint from 2017 to 2020. Okay. Basically, teams know we cram the box. That puts us in a position where we can stop the run or contain the run. And it also puts us in a position where we're going to intercept some passes because Jimmy has to play within the numbers and 10 yards and in. That's where his bread is buttered. Now, it doesn't mean that he can't make a throw from time to time. You look at the Rams game where he was able to complete 2 3rd and longs, which was awesome to see. But even those were down the middle, right? Those are not outside the number throws. So he's limited. And this is not a knock on Jimmy. It just is what it is. So, if you have that second gear, then you can get around it once the book is out on you. But I just don't believe he has that second gear. It's just he's not as physically gifted, right? And so he's not going to be able to take off and run. He's not going to all of a sudden have a power arm. It's just not the way he's built. He's a starting quarterback in this league, but he's a limited one. And that's what it comes down to. So.
Yeah, I agree. Next, let's see. The most important player on this team on offense and defense.
Oh, gosh. This one's tough. This one's really tough. So, most important player is not necessarily the best player. So, don't get up in arms when I give you my names. I'll go defense, and then you can go defense, and then we'll move over to offense. Okay. So, for defense, it's 100% Jason Verrett. If Jason Verrett goes down, there is not the depth behind him to make up for losing Jason Verrett. And I'm worried about Jason Verrett going down because history tells us he has trouble staying healthy. So let's hope that Verrett has a healthy season and we're good to go. But if this secondary loses Jason Verrett, it's going to be a problem. So for me, the most important player on this defense is Jason Verrett.
Yeah, I definitely see that. I'm really worried about if that were to happen, we were to lose him, because it is scary after that.
Yeah, absolutely.
For me, I'm going to go with Fred Warner, the quarterback of the defense. I don't think none of us realize how much that defense runs through him and what it would be like if we didn't have him, because we haven't had to experience that since he started. He's been solid. He's been there for every game. It's like that guy, you can tell that he truly loves being a 49er and that he truly loves playing football, and I love to see that. And especially now, with Salah leaving, and, I think this year is going to be more important for Fred than ever before to help out that defense and, make sure that it's going in the right direction this year.
I think that's a great pick, and it's one that I really can't argue, because you look at this defense last year, they lost everybody. Everybody on that team was out for some period of time, other than, I think, Verrett, and Warner held it down. This team was still a top 10 defense for a majority of that season, and they were even a top 5 defense for a majority of that season. I think they finished 9th. I'd have to double check that, but that's because Fred Warner was on the field. If Fred Warner was not on the field, that would not have even been close to possible. So, yeah, I mean, losing Fred Warner is a big deal. And, the other thing, you talked about losing Salah. Well, D'Amico Ryans was a linebacker, and he's going to trust and lay everything he has onto Fred Warner and expect that he's the quarterback of that defense. So, yeah, I think with a first-year coordinator losing Fred, that could be a disaster as well.
All right, offense. I'm going, you going?
You go ahead. You take it first this time.
All right. So I was kind of going back and forth with this one a little bit. And I came up with 2 people for 2 little bit of different reasons.
Okay.
First, I'm going to go with Trent Williams.
Okay.
Just because... I don't know. I mean, just the backups behind Trent Williams, like who's going to have to fill in that spot? Like, I'm not, secure with that. And he just plays such a, important role on that offensive line, and, the player that he is. And obviously that's why he's getting paid the money that he's getting paid. And I think just, getting out to that next level, like he's just so strong. Like that guy is a beast. Seriously. Like, I've never seen somebody like so big and so strong move so fast and just, so easily. Like I can't even move the way that he moves, it's just like, holy smokes. So him, and then I'm going to go with, and like you said, this doesn't mean that it's the best person on the team or not even my favorite on the team, but I'm going to go with Debo, just because the way that offense runs, and this is specifically when Jimmy's as in quarterback, is the way that offense runs when Debo's on the field and off the field is completely different. Like he has that offense set up and doing everything that Shanahan needs it to do, and running by, him being on the field and doing, like filling in that role of just the be anywhere, do everything, wide receiver. And I think when we lost him and, the games that we've had to go without him, we've seen that difference. And then when he comes back from injury, it's like a completely different offense on the field, So I think that while Jimmy is quarterback, and I mean, we'll see how they use him when Lance is quarterback, it could be the same, we have to wait and see. We don't know. But I think there's for sure a huge difference when he's on and off the field.
I agree with that completely. And, Debo, I almost went with Debo. I did not think of Trent Williams, but obviously, I mean, we're talking about an absolute beast. arguably the best left tackle in the game, Hall of Famer. So, yeah, anytime you lose that, that's never a good thing. I think you could argue Alex Mack because we know what this team looks like without a center. But the guy I'm going to go with is going to be George Kittle. And the reason I say that is because he helps out the right side of that offensive line so much. Like, he can really cover for some of the deficiencies that Mike McGlinchey has when it comes to blocking, especially in the pass game. If you need that extra blocker, he's going to do his thing. Yeah. And again, if Jimmy is going to be the starter, he's a safety blanket, right? Like, he's constantly looking for him over the middle. So, you add that in, you add the fire he brings when he's on the field, just the way that he gets people amped up, the way he searches for contact, just the way he loves the game. I just think that that's super contagious. In this offense, I think it does it with Debo, and I think it does it with Kittle. As soon as one of those guys is out, you just see this major drop-off. Yeah. And you see the drop-off in energy, you see the drop-off in a swagger, and I think that losing either one of those guys would be devastating. But for me, I'm going to take George Kittle.
Yeah, and I think I would have, George was one that was right there on the fence for me too, but I think that we've gone without him more, lately than we've had him. Yeah. Like, I feel like, but so that's what kind of, put him down the list a little bit for me. But yeah, I completely agree that offense, I mean, we see the things that George does is crazy, like that offense is definitely different with him on the field.
You know what really sold me on George Kittle is, hey, what's up, Bay? Bay just subbed. But what sold me on George Kittle was obviously he's a great receiver, right? And we knew he was a good blocker, especially out on the edge. What sold me on him is when they played against the New Orleans Saints. And I saw him go one-on-one with one of the best pass rushers in this game, Cam Jordan, and hold him in check time after time after time. Like, whoa, wait a minute. You have a tight end that can hold one of the best pass rushers on his own in check. That's unbelievable. So right from that point on, I'm like, all right, this dude is just different than anybody I've ever seen play the game at the tight end position. Not that I didn't like him before or wasn't, sold on him being a good player before, but that right there just took him to a whole new level for me. And that was when I realized just how important that Kittle was to this team.
Right. Yeah. The fact that all that and the fact that he enjoys doing it, like that he doesn't mind not catching passes. Like, he wants to block as well. Yep. He gets the same enjoyment out of both things. And, that's actually rare, I think, for, a pass catcher, because it seems like, they're more greedy and want, it to be all about them, and I think, as we can see with the little competition between him and Kelsey, if Kelsey would spend more time blocking, he probably wouldn't have all those yards that he has either. Yeah,
that's exactly. You're absolutely right. Listen, if Kittle and Kelsey flip-flop spots, I know that Kittle can go do what Kelsey does. Yeah. I don't think Kelsey can come in and do what Kittle does. That's where the difference is.
Completely agree. Let's go ahead and head over to who we think the breakout star on the team will be this season.
Oh, man. Okay, so I'm going to go with one of the guys that you mentioned as the most important on this team. So this is a guy that we know. This is a guy that most of us love. For me, he's probably my favorite player on the team. But I also think that the world is going to come to know who this player is. And I think people are sleeping on him. And I think that's Debo Samuel. I think Debo is going to stay healthy. I think Debo's a lock for 1,100 yards from scrimmage and 7 or 8 touchdowns. And I think that there's a lot of people around the league that are going to take notice and realize what kind of weapon he is when he gets the ball in his hands. And I think that Debo Samuel is going to have an absolute monster season for this team. So I'm going with Debo Samuel.
Yeah, that's a good one. I would love to see that, actually. I hope he really has a great season and can stay healthy, more than anything, because he looks like he showed up into camp in great shape. Yeah. I haven't seen him look as good as what he looks right now. So let's
absolutely
hope that carries over.
He's serious about it.
Yeah. This one too, I was going back and forth between two, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go to somebody that plays alongside Debo with Ayuk.
Okay.
And
I'm
for the
cool with
same
that.
reason, because I mean, I feel like last year, you know, he was compared with the other wide receivers that came out in that class and never got never got the recognition that, you know, he deserved. And, you know, like I get that, yeah, he was out, you know, a few games, you know, with injury and COVID, but could you imagine had he played the full season, you know, had he had a quarterback that can throw downfield to him, you know, would the whole NFL then be talking about him more, you know? Like, I
Right.
just feel like he can do so much, and you can see that, you know, like he can run every route. He's the complete package at wide receiver. And I would love to see him just break out and show everybody, you know, that he deserved to be in that talk of top wide receivers in his draft class.
Yeah, you know what? Everybody obviously is talking about Jefferson, but everybody this whole offseason has been talking about from that same class, CD Lamb.
Yep.
And, you know, for good reason, another good player, but nobody is talking about Brandon Ayuk. And Ayuk, for all intents and purposes, averaged more yards per game than CD Lamb. And I thought he looked like the better overall player last year than CD Lamb. And you're right. I think that a lot of people are sleeping on him. And, you know, I guess the only reason I didn't pick Ayuk is because I don't know how long Jimmy's going to be the starter for. And again, I just talked about how Jimmy doesn't push the ball downfield. And I think that that definitely can help Brandon Ayuk break out. And I'm worried that he's going to turn into a slant machine. And that's where he's going to have to get all of his yards, right? And so, you know, if he's a slant machine and Kittle's coming over the middle, he's going to favor Kittle just because that's his boy. And they really do have a connection on the field. So that's my only worry. But if Trey Lance gets in within the first few games, I think Ayuk's going to go absolutely bonkers. So you might be onto something there.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping that we see I mean, we haven't seen it yet in preseason, but I'm hoping, you know, for years to come that we see a great connection between Lance and Ayuk, and obviously
Yeah.
with Debo too, you know.
Be fantastic, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Let's go to who. Are there any players on the team that you think could or will win an NFL end of the season award?
Yeah, I'm gonna give you. I have a couple, but I'll give you one, and then I'll let you go because I don't want to take anything, you know, away from you. But I'm gonna go with Fred Warner to be the Defensive Player of the Year. I think,
Nice.
you know, you said it. You said that he was so important to this team. He's kind of the quarterback of the defense, and with a new defensive coordinator coming in and D'Amico Ryans, who actually played linebacker, he knows how important Fred Warner is. I also look at it like this. I think that people sleep on players like Jimmy Ward and Tart and even Fred Warner to a certain extent because they don't have the numbers in the box score. And the reason for that is because they were sitting in cover 3 and cover 4 a lot. This year, I think they're going to be a cover 1 defense. They're going to be very aggressive with the blitz. And I think it's going to put Fred Warner in a lot of positions to be a bit of a ball hawk. I think his interception numbers will be up. I think he's going to blitz more, so he'll get a few sacks. And so he will appease anybody who's just looking at box scores and saying, wow, Fred Warner really kind of broke out this year, even though he's already been an all-pro player. I think that he can win Defensive Player of the Year. So I'm going to put my money on him to do so.
I love it. I'm going to go with probably the easier one with Comeback Player of the Year. And I was actually, of course, you know, I'm going to go with Bosa for that. But as I was thinking about that, I started thinking that, you know, what if D4 were to come back and play at the D4 level that he can play at?
Right.
You know, like, I mean, he could be in that conversation too.
Yep.
He's definitely a guy that nobody expected to even be on the field. So if he can come back and have a D4, you know, year, I think that, you know, both of those guys could be up for the same award.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And that was the other one that I was going to say was Bosa for Comeback Player of the Year. But you're right about that. D Ford absolutely could be the Comeback Player of the Year as well. So I think we got a couple candidates there. You know, I think that Trey Lance could win Rookie of the Year if he gets enough starts under his belt. So we could be in for a lot of good things. Shanahan could be Coach of the Year. I really think that there's a possibility that there could be a lot of NFL awards handed out to this team, and the thought of that really excites me.
Yeah, I was definitely leaning for Lance for Rookie of the Year too if he ends up playing early enough. Because how many games did Herbert play what week did he come in?
He came in week 2, yeah. So he played 15 games. So, I mean, you kind of need him to play
3.
early. Yeah. Week 3 is probably the cutoff point. If he doesn't play by week 3 as the starter, probably going to be almost impossible unless he just lights the league on fire. It'll be almost impossible for him.
Yep.
Melissa makes a good point. She says, I hope that they don't give it to Dak because he's Dallas's quarterback.
Yeah.
I think there's a high probability that happens, unfortunately. But, Dak's a good guy. If he ends up getting it, I think it would be well-deserved as well. But, I think that just because he's a quarterback and he's a face of a franchise, he would probably have the upper edge if he plays well. But listen, if Bosa just balls out completely and is up for Defensive Player of the Year himself and falls short maybe of that award, he could absolutely get this one too. So it'll be interesting to see.
Yep, good point. But the thing is too with Dak, is he going to come back to a team that can actually play, or?
Yeah, well, that's the thing is,
if his team sucks, then he shouldn't be winning anything, Right.
Yeah, that's a good point. Right? Because I think offensively they can put up points, right? There's no doubt about that. I mean, you've got Zeke, you've got a good offensive line, you've got 3 very good receivers in Gallup, CeeDee Lamb, and Cooper. So you definitely can put up the stats and the points. The question is are you 9-8? Is that enough to get it done? Because if you don't win the division and you're 9-8, kind of hard to give the man that award. But I would say that comeback player of the year might be one of those things that they don't look at wins as much. They just look at an individual statistic. MVP, defensive player of the year, offensive player of the year. I think you've got to be on a winning team for sure. I'd have to go look at the history of it because I don't know for sure. I mean, they may look at those things, but they may not.
I mean, Alex Smith won it last year, right? His team wasn't very
That's
good,
true.
So.
Yeah, there you go. Good point. All right, yeah, point proven. So, yeah, I guess it doesn't matter what his record is.
So before we go, I just wanted to ask you one more thing about a completely different quarterback situation.
Yeah.
About what's going on with the Patriots.
Oh.
What do you think about Mac and the whole Cam situation? And do you think Mac's as good as he's showing? What do you think? Are you buying the hype or what?
Yeah, no, I'm not. Listen, Mac Jones is exactly what I thought he was. I thought that if he came in and had a ton of time in the pocket, he would pick people apart. And I just thought when he got to the NFL level that would not be the case. Now, the Patriots have a very good offensive line, okay? And they have a very good offensive coordinator. So maybe for the Patriots that can be the case, at least early on. And he can do some damage. What I do like about the quarterback situation is I love what Bill Belichick did. It takes a lot of guts to do this.
Yeah.
But he said, this is my starter. And not only that, I'm going to remove any distractions from this team and from this fan base. And I'm getting Cam out of here because we just talked about it with our quarterback situation. It could be the same problem there. Mac struggles. Cam Newton's a fan favorite. They're going to start chanting his name. We want Cam. We want Cam. That's the worst case scenario. You cannot go backwards once you go with that rookie quarterback. So he just said, I'm going to remove the problem completely. I'm going with Mac and throwing all my confidence in him. I love that. I think it takes a lot of guts, but it was the absolute right move. And I'm envious because I wish it was something that Shanahan did, quite frankly. That being said, I think Mac will be fine. He is what he is. He's never going to be a major difference maker, in my opinion. He definitely can play point guard, right? If we're looking at NBA point guards, he's Rajon Rondo, where he's going to distribute the ball like crazy. In his prime, he gets you 18 to 20 assists, but he's only going to score 5 to 6 points, right? But that's okay. You can win that way. Like, don't get me wrong. You can win a Super Bowl that way, right? but he's not going to be the reason solely that a team wins a Super Bowl. Where if you look at a Trey Lance or a Patrick Mahomes, that's Steph Curry, that's Damian Lillard. Like, that's a whole different level. You win because of those guys. So Mac Jones can be fine. Mac Jones can definitely win a Super Bowl as long as the team around him is stout. And if Mac Jones has time, he will be surgical. But the moment that he has a bad offensive line in front of him, he will struggle. So we'll see what ends up happening with him. I wish him the best of luck. I mean, we don't have to worry about him in our division. And I know that Trey's going to be great, so I don't care if Mac looks good too. I don't care if Fields looks good or any of those guys. All those guys can look great. At the end of the day, it's not going to matter because Trey Lance is that dude, and that will prove out over time.
Yeah, and that's why I asked you that because, obviously with the whole Mac coming to the 49ers thing, and now I'm seeing a lot, with Mac being compared to Trey, and that the 49ers, should have picked Mac because look how good he's doing in the preseason, and all that garbage. So that's why I just wanted to get your opinion on that.
Absolutely. And Pinore's over here taking notes. He's ready to call us all out. Grant saying the Cardinals finished first in the division. Vish says Aaron Banks is the best draft pick in years. Jessie says all 4 teams are making the playoffs. And Bay Area Baller says Zach Wilson wins Rookie of the Year. Nice, Pinore. Nice. I know you won't let me live it down. You will check me if I'm wrong. So can't wait for it.
And then one thing before we go, I wanted to start a new thing to where, my whole thing is I try to support everybody that I can support in the 49ers community, whether that be small business, whether that be content creators, whatever the case may be. Absolutely. So I wanted to start a new thing. My big thing is hashtag we all got to eat, because at the end of the day, we're all just trying to put food on the table for our family, and if we all supported each other, we could do that a lot better and faster and more. And, so that's all it takes is a little bit of support from the rest of the community, and we could all get this thing going.
Agree.
So I wanted to, showcase a different member of the Faithful Fam, every so often, just to get them out there. And the first person I'm going to go with is, his name's Robert, on Twitter, Dabn All Day. He can be found at Inspector Dabbit. He makes amazing 49ers gear. He made this Trey Lance drip shirt. All these stickers here are made by him. So if you guys can, go check him out, give him some support. He does custom things. He does all kinds of cups, mugs, shirts, all different stuff, baby clothes. He's a great guy. Give your support. And let's just try, to show each other some love and help and support out there.
I agree with you, Miriah. I think that's a fantastic thing that you're doing. And, I think that there's definitely going to be that natural competition out there, right? We're all competitors. I'm sure that, we all have a little bit of fire in us, and that's what's driven us to get to this point. But with that being said, if Miriah wins, Jessie wins, right? Because when we go cross-channel, that just means that there's more eyes on everybody, right? And that means that you're pulling subs from every channel that you appear on and vice versa. So why not support each other? Give everybody out there love. I may not be able to make it to everybody's stream every time, but one thing I will say is that anybody that's out there in the community that I know exists has seen me in their chat. I am a subscriber of every single one of their channels. I follow them on Twitter, and if they tweet out a show and I see it, I'm going to retweet it. And I love that attitude. I love that you're doing that. I think it's a fantastic thing to do. And if you're in this chat right now and you're here for the first time, make sure that you subscribe to Miriah's channel. Let's get her to that 100 stat so that the more subscribers she has, that means that more people get love on the back end because she's showing that love. She's always given every content creator in this community love from the beginning. Before she even knew who I was, she supported me. And, she just has a great heart. So let's show it back to her. Let's give her a sub. Make sure you hit that bell notification. Give her a like. Follow her on Twitter. Whatever you can do to support her, because she's just a great soul in this community and she absolutely deserves it. So, Miriah, thank you for being a contributor to this community in a positive way. And thank you for having me on the show.
Jessie, thank you so much. I truly appreciate you, everything you've done. I appreciate everybody that's here hanging out with us for an hour now. You guys have been great. Without you guys, we couldn't do what we do. So, with that being said, everybody remain faithful, and we'll see you next time.